So in my last few videos, I've talked a lot about Iran and Israel, and one thing should be very obvious by now. These two countries genuinely hate each other. And when I started to think about it after a few days, I realized that countries don't go from working together to threatening each other for decades. Something must have happened behind the scene. And then I started digging into the story, and then I found out that this whole thing didn't start with missiles. It began with a revolution. Back in the 1970s, Iran and Israel were quietly close. Not best friend kind of close though, but close enough that they cooperated together, they worked together, there were business deals. Israel, as a matter of fact, got oil from Iran, and their intelligence agencies actually worked together. And there were kind of connections that were done quietly behind the scene. And at the time, Iran was being ruled by the Shah, a Western backed monarch who was kind of close to America. And because America and Israel were allies, the things between Iran and Israel were relatively calm too, such that if you entered Tehran in the 1970s and told people that one day Iran and Israel were going to be the biggest enemies in the Middle East, they would have probably laughed and considered that a joke, because that was how different things were until 1979 happened. And then the whole story was flipped upside down. Because in 1979, Iran underwent a massive Islamic revolution. The Shah was overthrown, and an Islamic cleric known as Ayatollah Khomeini was sworn into office. He came into power, and then he changed Iranian political identity overnight. America was considered the great Satan, and Israel was considered the little Satan. And then one symbolic thing happened that let the rest of the world know that the relationship between these two countries was officially over. Iran shut down the Israeli embassy that was in Tehran and handed it over to the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And that move was a message. It showed that Iran was no longer aligning itself with Israel, but was publicly and openly associating with the Palestinian cause. The conflict stopped becoming political and started becoming dangerous because over the years, Iran started supporting armed groups that were hostile to Israel in the region, groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon. And Israel felt like it was becoming more regional, it was becoming more direct, and it was becoming less predictable. And so Israel responded just the way it usually responds to every other threat, with more surveillance, more military preparations, and more intelligence reports. And then eventually, the relationship between the two countries became a shadow war. Because the surprising thing about all this was that all the years that they fought, they never actually officially went into a fight. We're talking about cyber attacks, scientists getting assassinated, airstrikes, secret operations, and covert operations nobody fully publicly admitted to. And then at a point, the conflict stopped becoming political, like I said, and it was becoming like a long, dangerous chess game where every move is carefully calculated. Then came the nuclear issue. Israel was deeply worried that Iran could eventually develop nuclear weapons. And to Israel, that was a possibility that sounded like an existential threat. It was a problem that needed to be solved immediately. And that's why every time Iran's nuclear programs makes it to the headlines, Israel reacts very differently. And that's how tense the situation all has always been in the Middle East between these two countries. So when people ask why does Iran and Israel hate each other so much, you should know that it's not about one speech or one argument. This thing has been built over the years. It's a revolution that changed alliances, the support for Palestine that reshaped Iran's identity, regional power struggles that deepened hostility, and years of secret covert operations that turned suspicion into full-blown distrust. And that is why till today, even the littlest tension between the two countries gets the world's attention. So you should know that the story behind it is loaded with history. That's it, guys. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to my channel for more real world stories that is being broken down without confusion. I'm Mirama. Bye.